We are honored to be joined today by Paromita Vohra, the director of Working Girls, a documentary we've had the pleasure of screening just now. The multi-hyphenate talent, Miss Vohra, runs a website, has made several documentaries, has been a part of several museum installation projects. So over the next half an hour, we will be discussing the themes that occur and reoccur within her body of work. The place of women in India, what counts as labor, who sees whom, the place of sex and joy in the lives of modern-day Indians, etc., etc. Thank you so much, Ms. Vohra, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you so much for this wonderful film, Paromita. We are big fans of the way that you bring a signature mischief, joy, naughtiness, to all the forms that you produce. So we loved it. But really, I mean, to the last part of the film, which spoke about the care of care workers, and to frame it within this aspiration for independence, right? As I would like to know personally in your own life, I think we are teachers here. We understand that care cannot be quantified. It is expected of us, but at the same time, we also understand that there's a certain cost for care. In your own personal life, as an independent, joyous woman, what does it mean for you to produce this work? What does it mean to have care for care?
Okay, complicated question, but so I try to answer it in brief because that's kind of like being asked about your whole life in a way, right? But I think, like for me, this particular film, you know, I mean, it comes. I started working 35 years ago, and I made my first film 30 years ago, actually, about a women's collective called Annapurna in the textile mill neighborhood of Bombay. So I think that at this moment, we have left behind, we have a lot of kind of this English conversation on self-care. And people always saying, you know, care should be the system. But I don't see those people who are speaking about this caring about the women in the film. I don't see I mean, I see a lot of, you know, I made Unlimited Girls around 23 years ago, and at that time I made a film which wanted to reconnect young women to the idea of feminism, because many women would say, I believe in equality, but I'm not a feminist, right? And today everybody's like, I'm a feminist, but excuse me, what about so many other kinds of movements and struggles outside the internet, outside your kind of personal linguistic autonomy on the whole, or your desire for a good life? Like, how do you imagine that can happen unless the whole of society is actually shifting, right? So I think that there's a lot of conversation about intersectionality, and well, I mean, I think that many young people know more jargon than me, so poor things. But I think that in a way, what is the lived notion of politics that we are working with? And what is the way that we can actually care about what happens to other people and not feel that because we are doing that, we will not receive care ourselves? You know, I mean, I think this is a very simple but fundamental question of our times. And I think certainly, you know, I am that old that I grew up in a generation which had internalized the notion that you're supposed to do something good for the country, right? And of course, we've all critiqued all those discourses in some ways, but I am a little bit grateful for being told that I should think of myself as part of a larger world, for personal reasons as well. Because I imagined myself as part of a larger world, I really went into the larger world, right? I didn't stay close to home. I didn't stay close to my middle class or privileged identity in different ways, but I tried to do something different, sometimes wanting to make films, work in documentary, which everybody thought is a ridiculous choice of profession, because everybody used to say, you are such a promising girl, why are you making documentaries, you know? So there was this sort of a kind of set of, I won't even say choices, but set of directions that you choose, and you don't have any real knowledge of what's going to be at the end of it, but it's a tremendous adventure. And most of all, it's an adventure in possibility. Actually, all the things that people tell you can't do, like I have a news flash, you can do them. It's not easy, and you're not guaranteed a return on investment because you're actually investing in your own abundance and your own sense of connection to others. So I really believe that unless you think of the world as a big place of which you are a part, and if you don't choose that life of adventure, a little bit of risk is involved in that. If you're not continuously thinking of everybody who doesn't think exactly like you as an adversary, without that you will never discover difference, and you'll never challenge yourself and also find in your own self somebody else that you could be, right? So I think for me, this film, I've been working on a digital project for the last 10 years. So I think for me, the film was a great blessing, a great opportunity, because it gave me a chance to leave that space, to go out into the world, to meet people who have very different lives than mine. And I've traditionally stayed away from making films about people from a very different background than mine, out of a sense of unease about doing that. But I think for me, the film became a journey of reconnection with feminism, with why I chose to do the work that I do, with other people, with other ways of thinking. It also, I won't say that it challenged my theoretical approach or anything like that, but I made many discoveries along the way, which won't happen if you don't go out into the world, because then you're always going to believe what somebody else tells you rather than find out something for yourself. And I think feminism is about making something. Actually, it's that simple. You make some new paths in the world. So I got the chance to do that. And maybe this was an act of self-care in its own way, even though I didn't get much sleep and all the other things. Because I don't believe in self-care. I don't believe in work-life balance. So,
Yeah. So, Paromita, what you said just now about the way documentaries are received and were received by your close ones when they said, what a waste of your potential.
I think they still think that way.
Yeah. So I think we did a little bit of a bait and switch with our audience because our poster says film screening. And so I think some audience members came here expecting a film. I think I heard Lapata Ladies a title outside. So, but then they sat here and they realized it's a documentary.
But a documentary is a film.
But documentaries are famously dull, right? They're famously sort of punishment.
They're normally more famous if they're dull, actually.
Yeah. So what is it about the story of working women in India that you thought could be approached best through the documentary format?
I'm a documentary filmmaker, so whatever I do in that format. But first of all, I do not accept the distinction of fiction and non-fiction, documentary and feature, short film, music video. I believe that's a kind of caste system of form. Objection, Millard, that's all I can say, because I just believe that you put all of yourself into whatever you make, wherever you are, that's what you make, really. And then I feel a film, no matter what form it's in, has one primary task. That is to meet all your senses. You should watch the film with your body, the whole of your body. You should laugh, you should get a lump in your throat, you should feel angry, you should feel entertained, engaged, you should feel all those things. I think you feel it more in Working Girls than in some kind of, lugubrious film like Thappad or whatever it is that you like to praise and put in your stickers on Instagram. But I think it's a tremendously engaging film, and yeah, so I didn't have to think like, should I make a documentary or should I be making some other kind of film? Because I love making documentaries.
So what was the process behind choosing these particular professions as the lens through which you explored the working lives of women? So what is common to all of these professions in your eyes?
Well, actually, I have to say, the film is part of a project called the Laws of Social Reproduction, which looks at this idea of how social reproduction happens and how laws intersect with this to both perpetuate social identities in some ways. The person who conceptualized the project, Prabha Kotiswaran, she asked me if I would like to make a film with them. So they were already working on these different domains of paid and unpaid domestic work, sex work, erotic dance, surrogacy. So that is what I entered through. But as I began to make the film, I also I had always been interested in ASHA workers, and the Asha worker strikes that had been happening for the last couple of years. So then those things began to get added on. I had also read over the last few years many fantastic histories of law. I mean, Rohit Ray's book, but actually, like, I got started off on this whole thing of even reading academic books, almost like novels, because I read this book called The Spectre of Mother India by Mrinalini Sinha, and it was like it was like a whodunit, a big page turner, and you don't think that about history books, right? And actually, I read that book only because I had to do some work which required me to read it. But then I got kind of hooked, and there are all these fantastic histories of colonial India, which feel tremendously contemporary. It's actually, when you start reading those histories, you understand everything about the now. You understand why life is the way it is, or what people take for granted or think. So why we came to be the way we are in some ways is so much shaped by that history. But also what is fantastic in those histories is that there are all kinds of characters who are like outliers, anomalies, really like interesting characters. And on Agents of Ishq, we had begun to do this series called Histories of Ishq, because I started reading all of those things. And then because we were doing the series, and we would look for more such stories. So in a sense, when the project asked me to collaborate, I already was very interested in this history of law. So I knew that this was the only thing I actually knew when I set out to make the film, that I'm going to frame it through these histories, and I'm going to use animation to do it. So, I mean, I think I built on their research framework in a way. I worked with the framework, and then I built on it in my way. So it was a kind of, like intertwining process of their research and my approach and their approach.
So I actually, I was enjoying this conversation, listening to you talk, but it seems like the capitalization of care is like a great trick of the modern world, right? It is about quantifying and not quantifying, and somewhere staying in that paradox. And a lot of the conversations you are bringing up about self-care versus what this woman says about independence, I found myself chasing independence for the longest time, to realize that probably interdependence, community, these are essential things. So many of these worlds that you've sort of brought out in the film seem like opposites.
But opposites to each other, you mean?
Like, they seem like they're on other ends of the spectrum, right? Like a working mother who's working needs another working mother to care, right? So these are also chains of interdependence that we have interlocked. How do you see that playing out in the world around you? In friendships, friendship is another thing in the capitalization of care that we haven't really looked at. So what are some of these?
Well, I think, there's two kind of parallel discourses. So on the one hand, there's a lot of conversation about friendship, chosen families, and so on, and communities of care that we have. But these are often delinked from questions of capitalism, social structure, social welfare. So sometimes it's worrisome, because I think that these conversations unwittingly fall into a neoliberal kind of frame, where people are supposed to do all the work of caregiving, and the state has no responsibility for caregiving. So we are not supposed to have good schools, good healthcare, but we are supposed to be there for each other. So what may seem, and in some ways I do feel like, sexuality and gender as topics have been easily appropriated by the neoliberal agenda, because then it all becomes about, we say we are radical because, and in some ways you are, like when you step out of the traditional family structure and the traditional heteronormative world. But really the question is that the normative world, or these chains of interdependence, some of which are acknowledged and some of which are not acknowledged, right? They all exist to prop up a kind of capitalist and patriarchal society. So can we really have a caring society or caring life without conceptualizing this different society and different structure? Can we have it without also stepping out of the structure a little bit, right? Like if you want to be within that same framework, then you'll have to make a very conscious choice to keep on not giving in to the framework, right? So I think there are all these conversations that don't get had. I must say that one thing that I encountered while making the film is that, like especially in the sex work section, what you see is like a great autonomy of people, right? These are women who are very autonomous by nature, and they have tremendous communities of care amongst each other. Like when Vanita says, I learned to cook in the brothel क्योंकि मेरी सहेलियाँ बनाती थी ना खाना. So what is it that you are going in there, you are watching your friends cook, you are learning to cook from them. Yes, there's competition, violence, complexity in those spaces, but there's also care and love. And there are these women who are aging in that space and who are coming back to that space and being there. And you're seeing the women playing Shindur Khela together, but it's so tender, the way they touch each other. I found it tremendously moving. The way that all the people who are talking about this kind of chosen family construct, I think that it would be very helpful to also engage with these other communities which are not partaking of a certain middle class narrative, because they are outside that middle class, right? And the thing about being middle class is you always have the option to go back to the norm. You always keep that door open, actually. So, I think these are some conversations that I hope that we can have more. I mean, we definitely need it more right now. Yeah.
So, since you brought up the section on the sex working community, one of the possible objections that I see arising from the general audiences in the future for this documentary is them saying, oh, one of these things is not like the other. So, I can understand that people who look at these working women through very conventional categories of morality will say, oh, these other women are working women, they're all recognized professionals, but this section on sex work perhaps doesn't belong here because, morality. So do you anticipate that sort of reaction? Do you anticipate people saying, oh, you can't compare them to ASHA workers, you can't compare them to domestic servants, you shouldn't be comparing them to any other line of work. It's just inherently different.
I mean, people might have come in thinking that, but I don't think anybody who watches the film says it afterwards, because that's not how the film is constructed. I mean, there's a reason why the film begins with the worlds of dance and sex work, because it will make you very comfortable if we start the film with mothers, and then you will say that's different. But when you enter the film and admit it, everybody was a little bit restless after the surrogacy section because it's so alluring. The women in the sex work part, in the dance, Rita, who, I just love Rita. Like, you are so involved with these people. They have taken you over so much that you don't stop to say this is wrong. And that is the most important thing, that you have to be with people who are different than you to experience a modicum of equality with another person. You have to inhabit their presence and not reframe their presence by your logic, right? Which is what a lot of films and a lot of things about other people do. So really, when you understand every person that we meet is doing the same kind of thing, right? Somebody is cooking, somebody is taking care of her kid. You enter through a very different kind of activity than the work that they do, and you see how all those things are intertwined. But you also, the thread that you see how the idea of femininity as being something to do with motherhood and taking care of others is broken apart by sex work and erotic dance and the idea of caste that underlies it. And so by the time you arrive at the story of the oldest unpaid profession in the world, you can't even look at all those women comfortably, right? And I think that's kind of important, and affectively, even you feel it in your gut, these things are all connected, that because we deify mothers, we do not pay ASHA workers. So I don't believe in making films worrying about what other people think. I make a film to say, this is the world I believe in. This is what I like. And if you want to enter this and feel it, great. But I'm not trying to do some mind control of others and say, I know what they think and now I'll do some behavior change number. But I think that I want to make a vibrant film about the things I believe in. And I want to invite the audience to enter and be in that world and say, actually, this is the world I prefer to my own, and maybe do something to change your own world, right?
And you're absolutely right that the framing of all of these parallel narratives, it really does reinforce the common thread that, yes, they're all working and they're all laboring, using their bodies. And so therefore, why are we so wedded to our conventional ideas of morality?
I think that actually Bishakha has a thesis line in the film, right? She says that, I was so amazed when she said, तो कोई शादी करेगा और migrant labor की तरह औरत को घर पे रखेगा. That reconstituting of the housewife in that way that is exactly in the middle of the film. And it is the thesis point of the film, that all the work that women are supposed to do for free inside marriage, the moment they do it outside of marriage, it becomes immoral and illegal.
So the minute agency and economic independence infects this sacred space, it becomes a problem for the heteronormative social order.
The idea being that you're doing for free what you could get paid for, right, and you're supposed to do it for free out of love, right? So it casts doubt on that whole thing, right?
Yeah, no, I actually loved the part where Bishakha it's like a lightning jolt in the movie. And it also, I think in India, we love the family unit so much. We love the idea of family so much that even though we've had epics and Mahabharata on family disputes and inheritance and all of that, we refuse to see it as an economic unit, right? I feel like one of the biggest threats to acknowledging care through monetary thing is to say that, you know what, yes, the family is our beloved unit in the country and it's great, but it is also an economic unit.
Yeah, I think there's a separation of love and money that's always done, right? Like if it's either it's love or it's money. And so I think that what we're really saying is that love and money kind of, maybe also sometimes versions of each other. The idea is not to devalue the meaning of love and affection. The idea is to devalue the idea of inequality, which is endorsed by talking about love and care. And I think that for a lot of women, because they are not respected, because they are not accorded the kind of value that they crave, there is also a reaching out for the idea that I am looking after people. As a mother, I fulfill my duty. I think all the women that I met, they did have, at some core level, a thought that what I do is special. Alongside the thought that, well, I need it to be valued more. Like, in fact, Kamaksha, the Asha worker in Maharashtra, as well as Urvasha, at certain points in the conversation when I asked them, do you think you should be paid for housework? Both said, yes, I do, but it's not going to happen, is it? So it's not that women don't want to be paid for housework.
So speaking of love and money, one of the most jaw-dropping moments for me personally in the film was when the judge's judgment was read, right? And he's saying that a mother is not just a mother, a vessel of love, she's a philosopher, she's a guide, she's this, she's that, and therefore we think that she should be paid rupees 4,000 per month. The baldness of that monetary value in comparison with the laundry list of things that a mother is supposed to do. And then later, of course, when the Asha workers very cannily say that they rely on us for feminine care, for feminine concern and gentleness, but they value it only at this much. There's just such great economic analysis in the documentary.
All the women are very theoretically clear, right? Actually they are speaking theory continuously in very simple terms, or not simple, but in lived terms.
Thank you, Paromita, for coming to Bhopal and for coming to Azim Premji University. We are really happy to have you here. The audience was thrilled. Thank you so much.